What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are here with the Inside Bassmaster Podcast presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company, episode 142. We're right in the middle of our northern back-to-back swing that we're ending the Bassmaster Elite Series season for 2023 with. I'm your host today, Ronnie Moore. My co-host, as usual, Kyle Jessie. Always appreciate him making the time over in Birmingham to jump on the podcast. You got to go get on a plane in just a few minutes, it seems, to fly up to the St. Lawrence River to cover the final event of the season. So thanks for taking the time with us. And Kyle, we are coming off Lake Champlain. What a fantastic event for the second smallmouth event in the row. You had to average 20 pounds at the end of the tournament. Everybody in the top 10 had over 80 pounds. Fantastic week there. And Kiyoya Fujita, Bassmaster Elite Series rookie, becoming the fourth event won this year by a Bassmaster Elite Series rookie. What a fantastic week. And we had another first-time winner for the Bassmaster Elite Series.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was, Steve Bowman sent a text message to all the photographers after the event. And although I wasn't there, I was still in the group message. And, he said something that kind of struck me. He said, we might have just witnessed history with Koya winning that tournament, because, I mean, like, what he's been able to do this year, it's not unlikely to think he'll be doing this a lot more, in the years to come and seasons to come. Obviously is a phenomenal angler. You guys talked about it on live all week. Obviously has some things up his sleeve, some baits, some secretiveness to him. And then obviously is so good with forward-facing sonar. I mean, it was a clinic. I mean, it was watching Barry Bonds hit baseballs or Michael Jordan shoot jump shots. I mean, it was incredible to watch what he was able to do. Obviously, some people, that's not their favorite style of fishing. I think we both agree it's not really our favorite style of fishing, although, like you guys talked about and Davey talked about on live, it takes a special talent, just like any other style of fishing, to be good at it. And for him to be able to separate himself that much from the rest of the field, to me, was just incredible. And like I said, I don't think Koya's done.
Yeah, I mentioned it when we did our wrap-up of the winter. We always do it right when it live ends. We do a wrap-up of who we think won and just a congratulations and summing up their week. And I said, there are guys in the history of Bassmaster that were the best at jig flipping, the best at topwater, sight fishing. Maybe it was Tennessee River ledges. And then there's going to be a group of anglers where there is someone who is the best at forward-facing sonar and whatever techniques. This isn't just a big flipping stick and a big weight and you punch it through a grab. It is, any technique is within the realm of being used, and you know how to use that technology. And Fujita is one of the best, if not the best. We did get to see a young man's game, it seemed, at Champlain. There will be tournaments like that. There will be tournaments where it's old school fishing, when you see the St. John's River type tournaments where old soft plastics that are no longer made, the gator tails come back and the spinner baits come back. But in the realm of smallmouth, where they're one of the most pelagic fish out there other than spotted bass, catching those fish, I think it's super cool when you get on a contour line and you find a school of fish and you happen to just probe that school for 4 days. That's fantastic. I think it's even crazier when you're sitting over 100 feet of water, not on anything, and that there are schools of fish actively chasing bait. There are way more fish in these bodies of water than we ever thought before. Mark Zona said it has taught us a lot. It has showed us where we were wrong about fish. It showed us where we're right about fish. But what a dominating performance. Had the biggest bag on day 2 and day 3, Fujita did. And the guys like Justin Atkins, who have proven their skill at smallmouth, Cody Huff, what a fantastic Ozarks Midwest angler when it comes to smallmouth, largemouth, fishing offshore, fishing on the bank, whatever. Cody Huff has proved it, and he is fantastic with forward facing sonar. And to see so many of these guys going at it and really have identical weights. Kyle, I'll drop something on you. I don't know if you heard it during Bass Live yesterday. After day 1, 25% of the event is done. 1 day is in the books. 7 of our top 10 stayed in the top 10 all week. We had 3 anglers jump in and replace someone in the top 10. We had Robertson and Fouts jump into the top 10 on day 3, and we had them on camera for 2 days. And then we had Austin Felix jump in and be on camera on day 4, and we had him for the final day. So 7 anglers stayed in the top 10 all week, and 3 other guys jumped up to have great finishes as well. So what a crazy week at Champlain. It took the most weight it's ever taken there. And every single person in the top 10 weighed in 5 smallmouth every single day. That hasn't happened before.
Yeah, we were dead wrong about that. I'm not going to say that we didn't suggest that smallmouth were going to be a factor. Anytime you're on Lake Champlain, you know that smallmouth are going to be a factor. But I think that everybody expected largemouth to factor at least a little more than they did. It seemed like the way I could tell it, just from paying attention to guys and what they were saying in the stories that were being written and this, that, and the other was, the further out we were, the more largemouth were going to factor. And then the closer we got, it was just like less and less people were saying that, which was a little upsetting just based on the fact that you thought with the, maybe with the high water and things of that nature, there'd be some guys that would be able to catch them shallow, similar to, the way Jason Christie was fishing day 2 on camera. You thought maybe you would get to see more of that, but didn't work out that way. Definitely different in the sense that we, when we talked to Brian Schmidt, we pretty much asked him, hey, is there any way that it's going to be all largemouth? Anyway, it's going to be mixed. What do you think? Well, the standard answer is always a mixed bag, but did anybody in the top 10 even catch a largemouth? I mean, it was like everybody in the top 10 caught, 5 large or 5 smallmouth every single day, which is like definitely way off track of what it used to be. So definitely a unique tournament. One thing I will say too, I wanted to mention this when you were talking about those guys fishing over 100 feet of water and targeting those fish. You can hate it all you want. There's lessons to be learned there. I mean, I think that for myself, speaking, one of my home lakes now in Alabama, Smith Lake, Lake Washita back home, there's other lakes where fish do that, but like we've just never had the capability of finding those fish and doing that. So, rather than looking at it as a bad thing that everybody was using forward facing sonar, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you can use it as a learning lesson. Like there's fish out there that we can, tap into now that we've never tapped into before. So just one thing I thought about over the week and watching those guys do that. I hope that, people were learning from what they were doing, because that's something that I think, like I said, up until now, we've never really been able to do.
Yeah, and I think that there are some awesome, just watching nature, like looking at forward-facing sonar and learning about how these fish, I kind of can equate it now that I've done saltwater tournaments to how sailfish get, they use their bodies and how they're designed. They throw that sail up and they circle their bait fish and they corral them together, and then they get on a feeding frenzy. When we saw Cody Huff's graph and you see that big ball of bait 70 feet out in front of the boat, and then you see all those dots of smallmouth right below it and going actively up through bait balls of alewife, and then you see his bait falling and you see 50 bass rise up off the bottom, and he's like, oh my God, one's gonna get it, and then he gets it and you set the hook and it's a 4-pounder, and you're like, those are all 4-pounders. Holy smokes. These fish that we, like Zona nicknamed them, ghost fish that you never know where they're going to be. The fact that I think it's interesting, you don't have like a point to pull up on. Where's your starting spot? I'm going to go pull up on this stump for my first. No, I'm going to pull up in this area and drop my trolling motor, and I pray that they're not half a mile over there today, and that maybe they're, in this little ditch between these islands, and that they're somewhere in my sight, and I put my trolling motor down on the right layer. Like, how do you choose day to day as these bait balls move? The bait doesn't stay in the same spot. And so I think it's very intriguing. And this is coming from a guy who loves throwing a chatterbait, a frog, a buzzbait. I will literally die with those in my hand, and I'm okay with that. Like, that's the way I want to fish. That's my style. And or I'll go flip bushes, on Greer's Ferry, whatever. Knowing that there's people out there looking for groups of fish. So that's neither here nor there on how we fish, but we like to see those shallow grinders. And I can still admire and be mesmerized about how the best in the world, given the best technology in the world, can catch the biggest weight we've ever seen in a body of water. So kudos to the guys. Like we said, Fujita, Atkins, Huff, that was your top 3. So many other great smallmouth anglers in the top 10. Some guys who needed top 10s. Alex Redwine got one. Brian Smith got a top 10, which was great to see his second one. Shakurit, Fouts, Felix, Robertson was holding it down for everyone, not in the inland sea. And I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2 more guys, but Patrick Walters made the top 10, keeping his hopes alive for AOI. So many great stories. And that takes us now to the final leg of our season, the St. Lawrence River. To explain it quickly, we postponed Champlain a day for weather, got the 4-day tournament in. No one was at a disadvantage. 2 days of practice. They were practicing Tuesday and Wednesday at the St. Lawrence River. Everyone's trying to break down this body of water, these two bodies of water, the river and the lake, in 2 days. Some guys like our guest coming up will not even take a look at the river. They're only going to be in the lake. Some guys are like, I'm going to probably need to have some backup in case the weather's bad, because the wind should rear its head. It may be rearing its head during practice today and tomorrow morning. So St. Lawrence River, though, Kyle, the big question is, will we break 100 pounds again?
Tough to say. I'm typically on the less than optimistic side of these things. I feel like I can go on record for saying I don't think I've ever suggested that we'd get 100 pounds on any tournament. I truly think that as long as the weather will, it's not going to be great. Okay. I mean, there's no way it's going to be like nice for 4 days in a row. Like we talked about with Coop, you're never going to see that again. You're not going to get the 4 days in a row, of nice weather. So if the weather will at least just maintain, I guess what you want to call it, like just make it to where you can at least get out there and fish on the lake, I still think it's possible. I mean, I think that the one thing you can say, and with St. Clair, with Champlain, and with St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario in the past, and probably this go around, is like the better these guys get with their electronics and dial that in, like that just makes all these bodies of water look better. I think Davey and Dave talked about it during their segment at one point this last week. It's like that has to play a factor. Like it's not that the fisheries necessarily are just getting way better in the span of like a year or two. That might have a part of it, but I just think these guys are getting better at catching these fish. These smallmouth, I mean, I think you can utilize your electronics. And that's one thing I want to say too, without getting on too much of a tangent, is, I was having this conversation with somebody this week, was let's not act like this is something out of the norm for smallmouth tournaments. Let's not act like guys have never used their electronics to catch smallmouth. Like guys have in the past been flipping docks and throwing topwaters all the time. I mean, guys are still using their electronics. As long as electronics have been good enough to do that, which has been a long
100%.
time, guys are just dropping down on them with drop shots. Why do you think the drop shot became such a popular tool? It's because they could fish with it more vertically versus, making casts with it at certain fish. It's not like these smallmouth tournaments have not always been dominated by guys using their electronics. I just think that now, obviously, it's a different technology and they're able to tap into that. So, like I said, I just think the guys at large have gotten so good at catching the fish, and we know how good the St. Lawrence is. As long as the weather will kind of stay in check, I'd say it hits 100 again, to be honest.
Well, looking at the weather, one thing I learned from Mark Zona, hope he's not mad about this. It's a public website, but windfinder.com. Windfinder.com is a fantastic wind, radar and overlay, especially for the Great Lakes. It's going to show you direction based on the color. It's going to show you the speed, and then it'll show you a couple hours, 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., things like that. It is absolutely not perfect, but the direction is pretty solid in practice, and it's a lower, it's 10 or less, it seems, whether it's coming from the river or coming from the lake, it's 10 or less. But then when we get to Thursday, it's going to be heading straight from the southeast, which isn't bad because southwest is the way that's going to blow all the lake water towards the river, or northeast is where it's going to blow the river against the current of, the lake, and they're going to stack up those waves. So southeast is going to basically come from Jay Shakir's winning area in Chameau and straight cut off the mouth. And so if you take a left out of the river to go that way, you're going to be facing some stacking waves. But for the most part, the rest of the week, and it's also in green. Like it's going to be 20 plus miles an hour coming from the south. But the river's calmer, and the direction doesn't blow it straight down the gut. We probably will go, but it will be tricky for people who go out in the lake. And that's why when we talk about Angler of the Year, with Kyle Welcher, Brandon Cobb being 6 points apart, Welcher, in my opinion, feels like a guy who's going to put it all on the line. I'm going to the lake because I want to win this event, And if I win Angler of the Year trying to win this event, good deal. I don't think he's going to fish safe. Now, on the flip side, I don't think Brandon Cobb's going to fish safe, but I think that Brandon Cobb is so much better catching bass in the river than he would be in the lake when it's rough. So that's why I explain it that way. I feel like Welcher is going to sell out no matter what to try to do that. And Cobb is going to realize or look at it and be like, I want to go to the lake because I want to compete, but it is not going to be conducive weather to catching bass. This is going to be on the first day. If you're out in the lake a little bit, it's going to look like 2020 on the final day. It's going to be pretty big waves out there. So you have to kind of sit back and be like, am I good enough at catching fish in a big open lake on forward-facing sonar in 5 footers to do that? Or do I go find something in the river? I think that we could see a big swap in standings either way, in the swap or somebody trench in and get a bigger lead. So that's all on the docket too. We got a 15-point lead for Rookie of the Year. Fujita right behind Joey Cifuentes, who has 2 victories this year. Fujita has 1, but Fujita also has 4 top 7s. Absolutely crazy. And a 100th place finish at Santee Cooper is holding him back right now. But let's go ahead and jump in with our guest. We took advantage of the postponed day at Lake Champlain to interview our preview guest for this week, which is Canadian Bassmaster Elite Series rookie Cooper Gallant. He got to break down the St. Lawrence River and actually broke down Lake Ontario more so because he is one of those guys who's not even going to take a look at the river. The only time he's ever in the river is when he launches from takeoff to head to the lake. So Cooper Gallant is our guest today to preview the St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario, the final stop of the season for the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. Enjoy the interview with Coop, and we will be back afterwards with our fantasy picks. Well, Kyle, we had to pick one of the Canadians. We got 4 Canadians on the Bassmaster Elite Series, and one of them was way, way far west, and the other 3 are right there on the St. Lawrence River adjacent. So we had to get our Bassmaster Elite Series rookie and one of the rising stars of the sport, Cooper Gallant, on to preview the St. Lawrence River. Cooper, thanks for joining us today. This is going on. We're shooting this while you guys have a postponed day at Lake Champlain. Obviously, the weather there can get just as bad as it can up north, a little bit farther where you are. And so we're taking the time to do that. But appreciate you previewing St. Lawrence with us.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me. I always like talking fishing, especially when smallmouth are involved in the St. Lawrence.
It's kind of, Kyle, it's kind of one of the weirdest tournaments to preview because we've been here like every single year, basically since 2013, but somehow it seems like something is different every single time. Last year we were here at the St. Lawrence River in Ontario mid-July, and that was, I think on the podcast, I'll have to find the quote where I said 0 shot. Every year we talk about 100 pounds and 0 shot it's going to happen. Then we got 4 of the most beautiful days you could possibly have, and 100 pounds happen. Coop, did you see that possibly happening every year being in the 90s? Were we going to break 100? And then was that the recipe to do so? Perfect weather for 4 days in mid-July. I know the fish are bigger in August and September, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like last year it set up perfectly. Like you said, the weather was perfect. Like you barely ever see that throughout the entire year where you get a full week like that where it's flat, calm. So that was the perfect recipe for breaking 100 pounds. I think Corey and Jay, they're the 2 guys that had over 100 pounds. But yeah, like it was set up perfectly. I obviously wasn't fishing it because I wasn't on the elites back then, but I saw it all go down, and I was there at the weigh-in and everything, and it was pretty cool to watch. It was incredible to see how many giant bags were brought in. It was just ridiculous.
Well, Coop, that was a pretty impressive performance for sure. No question about it last year. But ironically, I had the chance to cover you at the St. Lawrence River just, I guess, 2 years ago out there on Ontario. And, we're talking about how it can certainly get bad out there. The first day I ever saw it actually bad was the final day of that event when I was out there covering you. And, I guess, does it feel like, I don't know how to word this, but like it almost feels like you're one of the guys that might get overlooked because of how many guys that have had so much consistent success there. But yourself, you've fished there a lot. Kind of tell us a little bit about your, experience fishing there, throughout your lifetime.
Yeah, to be honest with you, a lot of guys think I know it a lot better than I do, to be completely honest with you. I haven't fished out there as much as people think I might. I'm only about two hours to the St. Lawrence, and I don't know why I don't go there more, because it is the best smallmouth fishery in the entire world. But I've only fished about 4 tournaments out there. So you even look at Chris and Corey, they rarely ever go out there and just go fun fishing. Yeah, it is one of our home bodies of water, I guess, but we don't get out there as much as we would like to. But yeah, it's a fun place, and it's smallmouth. It's going to be a good event either way. Guys are going to catch them. I still think there's a very good possibility of, another 100 pounds again. Even with the weather and everything, I still think it can definitely go down. They live out there, and they still chew in those big waves. But yeah, when you were covering me at the Open, what was that, 2 years ago now?
Yeah,
21 in the fall.
It was rocking and rolling out there. It was blowing pretty good.
Well, there's basically just 3 people or 4 people: the camera boat driver, Kyle, Jessie, Brian, Evie, and Cooper Gallant, who knew where the heck you were, because we didn't see but 1 second of you on Bass Live, and that was on the run out there. We have new technology now, and we've been able to see people out in the lake, so there's no more secrets that can be hidden. But when it does come to preparation for a place like this, there are ways probably to train your brain. We think about the St. Lawrence River, 110 plus miles that are in play for the anglers to go all the way up to Messina, roughly, and all the way out to the mouth of the lake. Then you have the whole, half of Lake Ontario, which you couldn't practice that if you were given 3 weeks and cover everything. So when you think about this event, mid to late August, are you even thinking river? Are you thinking exclusively lake? Obviously, this is going up while you're practicing in the tournament, so you've already set your mind up. But now that we only have 2 days of practice for it, are you even checking the river, or are you exclusively going to go jump out in the lake?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Ronnie, the river doesn't even cross my mind. I will not spend 1 day in the river. Yeah, the lake 100%. Even if I've always said I'd rather spend 2 hours in the lake than 8 hours in the river. It's just, there's so many big ones in the lake, and it's way easier to catch 25 plus in the lake than it is in the river. And don't get me wrong, they are in the river for sure. I just feel like there's a way bigger population of big ones in the lake. And like I said, if I only have 2 hours to fish, I'm going. I'd rather have 2 hours out in the big lake than fish the river. I just like the way how it sets up. I like fishing current, but I just like the lake a lot better.
Coop, obviously, it doesn't really matter what your opinion is on this, but I'm going to ask anyways. It's out of Clayton, so it's not as far of a run, obviously, to get to the lake. This is something that we talked about last year as well. Are you one of the guys that would prefer it being out of Clayton for the shorter run, or would you rather it be out of Waddington just to keep less guys off the lake? What are your thoughts on that? Or do you just feel like you are able to fish around guys and are just kind of used to that?
Yeah, I don't really care where it would be out of. Either way, I'd go to the lake. But you are right. If it was out of Waddington, there might be, 25% of the guys might second guess and going to the lake or not. You're right. But yeah, I haven't really thought about that. I don't really care where it's launched out of. But it is nice being out of Clayton. You get more fishing time. And if it is rolling, instead of getting, even the river, it can get rocking and rolling too. So you definitely get more fishing time. If it's out of Clayton, but it goes both ways.
So we see the St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario, at least shallow Lake Ontario, come into play when you have those June tournaments, late May, June, when they're on bed or they're, we see it. And it doesn't matter if you're in the Waddington pool, area or northeast of there or down in Ogdensburg. It just seems like big ones show up obviously during the spawn, and you can catch them anywhere on the river. It's kind of neutralized. Then when we get to July and the lake's open, it seems like there are big ones out there on those random flats, random boulders that you can catch shallower and beat the river out. But when we get to August and September, if you remember that Open in September, which is about a month later than what we're going to be fishing next week, when you think about it, the river drifts, the ones that we knew, the guys just getting on those long drifts, catching big ones in August and September, they put out almost equal the amount of weight. Is that something that, can you explain that to us a little bit, how the river can kind of start to compete a little bit, especially with how rough the lake can get, but also how when they group up in the river on those drifts, they're already full up, they're bigger, and if you catch the right drift, you can catch 25 just like you can in the lake.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was saying earlier, you can definitely catch them in the river. It's just one of those deals, like, depending on who you are, if you like fishing the river and you feel comfortable out there, do it. I mean, you can catch giants in there, and you can definitely, get in the top 10 fishing river only for sure. I just personally think that there's more big ones. Like, yeah, they will bulk up, they'll group up in the river, and you can catch big socks. But to do 4 days in the row in the river, I think is a little bit harder than to do 4 days in a row in the lake. But yeah, definitely. I think they'll both play for sure. Like you said, they're going to be grouped up. They're going to be bulking up. They're going to be fat. They're going to weigh more. Um, I think there's going to be several guys still fishing in the river. But yeah, you can do both. You really can. It just comes down to what you're comfortable doing and what your gut's telling you to do. And with me, my gut's telling me to fish the lake. So.
Kyle, I wanted to jump in and follow up with that. The one big thing about the lake, it seems, whether we saw Clark Windlet doing it, Paul Mueller, Chris Johnston, Corey, doesn't matter, even Jay Shakurit, when you're out in the lake and it does get rough, there are often times where you can't see above the waves, and all of a sudden you're 10 feet higher than the waves, and then you're lower. It's harder to keep your transducer in the water. And with how live scope has impacted smallmouth tournaments, I've heard stories already just after day one of Champlain where guys, were in an area that could have had them in the top 10, but keeping your forward facing sonar in the water, keeping it clear, seeing the fish 60, 80 feet out at times, that's so crucial. So for guys like you who have fished for smallmouth in the lake before forward facing sonar, they know some of those boulders. It's home to you guys. Like if Kyle was blindfolded in a creek at Lake Ouachita, he could fish it no matter how rough it is. But you guys out in Ontario, you could do that without the technology. Is that something that goes into play when it does get rough and you lose a skill, you lose some technology at times, or it's inconsistent? Do you just have to train your brain to how you used to do it? Like, I need to just not get so overwhelmed with not having my screen in the water, like I want it to be.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, guys, I'm just gonna jump in the truck. It's starting to rain. Yeah, it can definitely get difficult when you're live scoping out deep or out in the lake, sorry, and it starts blowing, and you start getting in, 6-7 footers, like you said. The live scope deucer is gonna constantly be coming out of the water, and can make things hard. But you could still do doable. I mean, it's one of those things, like I've always said, like when you're out on the big lake and it's rough like that, especially if you're drifting with the waves and you're drifting at 3 miles an hour with your trolling motor on and everything. If you see one on scope, just pitch right away. Because if you try like lining up perfectly before you try and find it again, you've either drifted too far. And like I've always said, just if you see one, just pitch right away. And if you land within 10 feet of that smallmouth, 8 times out of 10, it's going to bite. But you are right. There's times where you're going against the wave and you're trying to fish a target, whether it's a boulder or rock pile, and it can be super difficult to get that right cast just because your deucer coming out of the water the whole time. But yeah, it makes it hard. But it's just one of those things you kind of have to adapt and kind of just fish the old school way and blind cast, and sometimes you just have to deal with it. Like when I was fishing the open a couple years ago, that's what it came down to. I had to, kind of take my eyes off the live scope, and I kind of had an idea of where they were setting up, and you just got to have that confidence of knowing that they're there and blind cast and fish slow and get them to bite. Sorry guys, I'm gonna head inside now. Now I can't hear because the rain's so hard.
This is a new
Sorry,
laptop. This is a new laptop he's working with too. So this is making me anxious just seeing him run through the rain with the laptop.
It's the live PD footage of Cooper Gallant getting chased by the rain.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. Kyle, go ahead.
For what it's worth, Coop, I was gonna say, you mentioned it being tough that last day during the open. keeping your transducer in the water. It wasn't easy to edit photos out there either, for what it's worth. That was not a whole lot of fun either. You got into, Ronnie kind of brought up the live scope, factor of smallmouth fishing, and it seems like more than any other style of fishing, the way guys fish for smallmouth has kind of changed the most, at least from my perspective. And you've heard some of the older guys, the guys that have been doing this for a lot longer, kind of piggyback off that. Just explain to the viewers, like, I got the chance to cover you at St. Clair too, and it was very interesting how much you just, moved. You weren't necessarily just covering a single rock or throwing at one specific, object. I know St. Clair's different, but like, explain how that has changed even in your young career and your young fishing lifetime versus, the way it was versus the way it is.
Yeah, it's changed for sure, especially for those fish like Lake St. Clair that cruise, and they're not really holding on anything. Like, they'll get on certain, like I was fishing sand out there, and they're getting on certain sand spots, but these sand spots can be, 100 feet by 100 feet, and like, you can it's just the biggest thing is it saved a lot of time. If they're there or not, and you can cover so much water. It's changed big time as far as like the cruising smallmouth go. Smallmouth cruise, they chase bait like this week on Lake Champlain. It's going to be the same thing on the St. Lawrence. There's a lot of fish out there that just cruise. And those fish are so hard to target without forward-facing sonar. Think of square footage. Like, there's so much water out there, and you can waste a lot of time just casting to nothing. But now with forward-facing sonar, you can literally cover an area that's 200 feet by 200 feet in 10 minutes. Put the trolling motor on high and just scope, and you'll see them. So it saved time, and then it just gave us the opportunity to pitch a drop shot or whatever it may be right on their head and get them to bite. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's saved time, and it's shown us. It's just allowed us to fish for smallmouth that we might not fish for, like those cruising fish. Like, a lot of the times back, 5-10 years ago, most guys were fishing for smallmouth that were relating to a boulder or rock pile, but now we're able to fish for those cruising smallmouth that are out in the B.A.S.S.
So, Coop, I want to go not on the St. Lawrence train. I'm thinking about it because you were not qualified for the Elite Series quite yet when we had the St. Lawrence last year. You were watching it. You had some work to still do in the opens to be able to make sure you qualified the rest of the year. But going back from that, we saw you in the fall jump in one event, and you almost won it at the St. Lawrence. Then you'd fish the full season and qualify for the Elite Series. Before that, the last time I had talked to Cooper Gallant or met him was 2015 at the high school championship. What was Cooper Gallant doing from 2015 in the summer at Kentucky Lake, going from there until 2021? Those 6 years, we know college fishings are out for a lot of the guys in the States. I don't know what the goal is for Canadian anglers, if it was just heavy team tournaments, solo tournament series, what it is, or how you were getting prepared for all of a sudden when the opportunity to jump into the opens came about, that you and a lot of other Canadians have started to make that surge.
Yeah, so I was obviously doing a lot of fishing in between that time, fishing as much as I can. I got lucky growing up. I had some pretty amazing bosses. They all fished. They understood. They let me take time off to fish tournaments. So I fished a lot of tournaments back home and in the States as well. I also did a lot of multi-species fishing. I still do. I love fishing for everything that swims. So in between that time, I was just fishing my brains out. I didn't care what it was. But from, at the time, like when I first met in 2015, Ronnie, like, that was one of the goals in my head, was to fish the Elite Series. And yeah, I just worked my butt off, fished a bunch. And shortly after that, Ronnie, I got my own boat and started fishing team tournaments back home, fished some stuff in the States, through qualifying through tournaments back home. And that's where the bug started, really, was around that time. And yeah, just fished as much as I could. I knew this is what I wanted to do. And like I said, I got super lucky with the support from sponsors, family, friends, and my bosses that let me take the time off work to do it. As everyone knows, time on the water is one of the most important things. So yeah, I spent years fishing as much as I could. one goal in mind, and that was the Elite Series. Come true for sure. Whatever to do, and we're doing it.
So there's a couple things there, Coop. You won an open, you almost won an open and lost the lead on the final day. Then the next season you end up winning an open to go to the Classic. Then you qualify for the Elite Series. Now you've had your rod and line right at the base of a victory on the Elite Series just a few weeks ago. What's that been like? Getting that open win in a shortened event, going to the Bassmaster Classic and experiencing that, obviously being a kid in the splash wheel years ago. Tell me about that Classic experience a little bit to kind of kick off your elite season. You had fished a few events, but that's kind of like something I get. Everyone's probably excited for Okeechobee, but man, the Knoxville Classic was probably still like on your head, even fishing like on a tough day of practice. You're like, man, I just can't wait in a few weeks to get to go to the Classic and compete in it.
Yeah, for sure. It was crazy. I mean, I remember like I've been to about 6 or 7 classics growing up. And one of the reasons why I loved going so much, it just fueled the fire for me. Like every time I went to the classic, it just like fueled the fire for me, whether I was fishing tournaments back home or the opens. And man, it was an incredible experience. And after the classic, like growing up, going to them, it made me so hungry. But after fishing it, like it's made me 10 times hungrier. I didn't think I could get hungrier. And like the hunger is just ridiculous. And like all throughout this year, it's like you never want to miss one now. Like I've only done one, but like I never want to miss a classic. And it's an unforgettable experience. I hope more Canadians back home have the opportunity to do it. I know a lot of Canadians back home are fishing the opens. It's insane. I don't even know how to describe it. Like I really don't. It's just something that I want other Canadians to experience because it's something special. It's incredible. Hopefully we can get there on Grand Lake, but we got some work to do in the next two. I'm sitting pretty decent in points, but it's fishing. Anything can happen. Nothing's official until the last tournament of the season once it's done and over with. But yeah, hopefully we can be there again next year.
Well, Coop, you kind of set it up right there. I was going to ask you, obviously sitting in a good spot right now and during your rookie season, if you could just summarize your experience on your rookie season, kind of the ups and downs. Obviously, you got to experience, obviously what it's like through the opens to an extent, but like, what has the experience been like for you during your first year?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been awesome. Lot of ups and downs. Lot of ups and downs. A lot of stressful days and a lot of very exciting, fun days. It's a roller coaster full of emotions, but that's what makes this game so fun. It's different every day you go out there, but it's just super cool. I mean, there's so many guys on tour that I've looked up to for so many years. Obviously, all the Canadian boys and a lot of other elite anglers, and now I'm fishing against them. It's pretty wild. But no, it's been an absolute blast. Bassmaster, everyone at Bass has been super welcoming. They do a great job with everything. And man, I'm just hoping I can stay for many years to come because it's all I've ever wanted to do. And now that I'm here, that's what I've always said. Like you have to work so hard to get to the elites, but once you make it, you have to work even harder to stay. That's just how it is. Once you make it, it doesn't automatically mean you're going to be there for forever. But I want to be there forever, so we got some work to do for sure.
Well, there are probably some places on the Elite Series schedule this year that don't look anything like back home, or even stuff you fished in the States. You haven't been to maybe some of the bodies of water. So tell me, I'm going to have two things. Tell me about a practice that was terrible, that you weren't looking forward to the tournament, or you were really worried and it ended up being a good finish for you, and vice versa, where you had a really good practice and it was a real big letdown for your performance in the tournament, because I know it can go both ways out there. And so sometimes your biggest win is just making a cut when you thought you'd zero, and then your biggest letdown is barely making the cut when you thought you'd win.
Yeah, for sure. To be completely honest with you, I was saying it last week at St. Clair. This is the first good practice I've had all year. I have not had a good practice all year, and it's been frustrating. I've been fishing by the seat of my pants a lot this year, like several different events. Probably my next best practice to Lake St. Clair is probably Okeechobee. Had a pretty good practice there. I didn't really have a good practice, but like I felt like I was in the right area. I was getting some big bites, and I just had a good feeling, And I've had good feelings about other events too, but Lake Murray, I had a terrible practice. And I didn't have a great tournament. I think I cashed a check there. I'm not too sure, but it was one that I was like, I didn't even catch a limit the one day of practice, which is ridiculous because there is so much bass out there, like so many bass. And I remember getting off the water. I'm like, how did I only catch? And I'm like fishing, like I'm trying to get bit. And I got like 3 bites that one day. And I'm like, there's so many bass out here. How can I not catch 5 of the things? So that one was frustrating. And I had a decent tournament. Not obviously, it wasn't great, but kind of survived that one. But no, I really haven't had any great practices this year. It's been pretty frustrating up until St. Clair. As far as having a good practice and not really catching, to be honest, was this week practice. So as far as like having a good practice and not so good tournament's not over yet, but day 1 on Champlain was yesterday, and I only had 17 pounds. I'm sitting in 56, so that's disappointing. I had a pretty good practice. I know I'm in the right area, so we're going out tomorrow. Hopefully we can catch 20 plus pounds, but yeah, I don't know. It's just been an up and down year as far as practices have been going. It's been a weird one for sure.
The weights are crazy when you're disappointed with 17 and change and outside of that. But after all, this is the St. Lawrence preview, so let's talk about weights there. Let's predict a winning weight. We make all of our guests do this. So if you're way off, like me and Ronnie typically are, we'll make fun of you next week or the week after. And then if you're right on, we'll give you some credit. So winning weight, and then what do you think the 50 cut weight will be like to get paid?
I'm gonna say winning weight 99 pounds.
Ooh.
99 to 100.
No, it's one or the other. We're getting to 100 or not. You got to
Okay.
tell us right now if we're going to catch 100 pounds there.
Yeah, I'm going to say 100.5.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
100.5. I don't know. I just think, yeah, there's big ones. Big ones are going to be caught no matter how rough the lake's going to be. They still chew when there's 4, 5, 6, 7 footers out there. I still think there's potential to catch 100 for sure. As far as the cut goes, man, what was it last year? 20?
It was over 20. You can have
change,
20 a day.
Yeah.
I know. I think I remember this just because it was Wes Logan finished one spot out of the cut and he had over 20 pounds a day.
I think it was like
20.
Yeah.
I think like 58th was like 40 pounds and 6 ounces or something. Like, yeah. So you averaged over 20, like well into the 50s.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 20 a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Who's the guy who's going to get 100 pounds, 8 ounces? Is that going to be you? You're going to be the winner? We're going to see another rookie take the title?
I don't know. I hope so. I would love to catch 100 pounds of smallmouth for sure. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun.
Last thing that I will ask you before we let you go, St. Lawrence related, 100 pounds getting broken in a 4-day national tournament. It hadn't happened ever before on the tour, the pro circuits. Was that something that Canadians and tournament bass fishermen in the Northeast were waiting on to happen? And did they get super excited that it happened on maybe their home body of water or a body of water they claim to be home? That when you see a great tournament show up and it puts out the weight and you're like, yes, like we get a piece of history. I know Clayton was super excited to host the first 100-pound pro tournament. And so was that the same thing for you guys, take kind of pride in that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was one of those things that everyone's talked about for the past several years. Like, it's going to take 100 pounds one year for sure. The fish are getting bigger. Guys are getting better at catching them. So yeah, for sure. It's super cool to see it all go down 100%. It's crazy. It's still crazy to even think about that. Like 100 pounds of smallmouth.
Holy cow.
I think Jay had what, 104 pounds? Like, that's just ridiculous.
We had like a countdown tracker kind of thing, almost not like the time wise, but like what fish, like me and Such knew on live, like Jay Shakir needs like a 4-pound 7-ouncer to do it, and he catch one and was like, I'll just put it on the scale, and it was like 412, and we're like, there it is. Like, he unofficially, nothing
Yeah.
is for sure, but like, that's the fish that did it. And we got so excited in live. I was making a graphic for Century Club. It was like, unofficially, there he is on Bass Track knocking it out. So very, very cool. And hopefully we see Cooper Gallant stacking triple digits on the scales this week at the Bassmaster Elite. Coop, thank you for joining us on the Inside Bassmaster Podcast presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company. We will see you hopefully on Bassmaster Live at some point this week. I will say this. We're shooting this with one more guaranteed day at Champlain. I need you to move up to keep your hat in the ring for Rookie of the Year, okay? There's 4 or 5 stud rookies in that race. I need you to get into the top 25 at Champlain so that it's a race and everyone's got pressure at St. Lawrence. I want to see some dramatics.
I'm gonna try. We need a big bag tomorrow. We'll see what happens. They live out here, so I'm looking forward to getting out. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you at the St. Lawrence.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Cooper Gallant. Kyle, it's always great talking to Cooper Gallant, bringing up those stories of meeting him in 2015 when he was just a wee little child, and now he is a grown man competing at a high level in the Elite Series, and he'll be one to watch. I'm going to go ahead and spoiler alert, he's going to be on my fantasy teams, and he's going to be on Bassmaster Live day 1. We're going to have a camera in the boat unless something has changed on the final day of practice. That should be the plan there, but it's always good talking to Coop. Seems really good at a couple things. Good at catching bass, good at social media, and he's really great with the actual media and talking to us about things, explaining it. Just kind of a breath of fresh air. It's good to see young guys pop in that get it, and Coop has gotten it for a long time now. He's definitely got a great support system, great family that is supporting his dream.
Yeah, no question about it. Yeah, Coop's a special individual. A joy to deal with, a joy to work with. As we, as I mentioned in the interview with Coop, obviously got to cover him just a couple of years ago on the St. Lawrence River, and that was a real joy getting to work with him there. And I could tell right off the bat, having some conversations with you during that tournament, it's like, this is not just one of those guys that's just jackpotting an open just because he wants to. Like, this guy's really good, and he's going to make it if he wants to. And of course, fish the opens the next year and qualified. So not too difficult as far as his story to make it. Obviously took him 1 year, and here he is doing great.
Yeah, and I think that it's encouraging to see. We want to talk about all the high school anglers, college anglers from the U.S. that are trying to make it. It's cool to see that generation support bass fishing and want to pursue this dream. It's also very cool to see guys like Fujita, Taku Ito, the Canadian regime. Jamie Bruce is in 3rd in our Opens EQ race, I believe, right now. Or no, he got 3rd. He got 3rd at the St. Lawrence River in our last stop. He is in the top 10, I think 8th place in our Opens EQ. So you have Canadians all over. Coop being one of those. It's cool to see Corey, Chris, and Gussie lead the charge on that and encourage more guys to try to jump in and make the elites. With that being said, let's get into our fantasy fishing picks for the St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario. Like we said, late August is this tournament. Last time we were here when Jay Shakir won with 100 pounds, it was mid to late July. Different time of the year. Definitely going to be different weather. Not going to have it crystal calm and clear like we had last time. It will be a little bumpy out there. But the big smallmouth still live there, and I'm excited to see how it goes down on Bassmaster Live and more. So let's get into our 5 buckets for Rapala Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing. Kyle, I'm sitting at a balmy 70% right now. I am 10,000th in the world. So the goal for this event, pass 362 people and get down into 9,000 and change for the rank overall, because this season has been one of my worst. I can honestly be judgmental towards guys who have a tough AOI year. That's out of the ordinary. Buddy Gross, Chris Zaldain. I'm having one of those years too. So just imagine if they had a podcast where they kicked us for being bad. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's their fault because we picked them anyway. So it's not really our fault. we're just picking guys, and they just, hey, sorry you let us down. No. So let's get into our buckets, and I'll start it off with bucket A. and we'll go back and forth, and you'll have to tell me go ahead and tell me your percentage overall as well and where you rank, because now it's almost a Kyle, Jessie, Ronnie Moore competition too.
No kidding. So not much better than you. I'm at 72.2%. And that's only because I had, some good anglers the last two tournaments. I wouldn't even say had good teams, because I still had, I think, sub 1,000 points, 2 tournaments in a row, which is just not good. Had some guys that did really well, including the winners, and then had some guys that weren't even factors at all. So yeah, it's been a really bad year. I've said this already on the podcast, but this is like 1,000% like the equivalent of, like, if I was a Major League Baseball team and this was the trade deadline, I'd be selling. I'd be regrouping for next year. I'd be selling off my pieces, and we're just gonna wait till next year. Like, next year is about the only thing we have to look forward to. But like you said, we can at least compete against each other down there in the 70s this week.
Yeah, I was ahead of you by like 50 points, and so it sounds like you beat me, because Kyle, frankly, I picked 2 guys trying to be sneaky. They both missed the cut, had bad performances, and then I picked another guy who broke down on day 1 and didn't make it back and was basically last place this week, got next to last. And then I had a guy in the top 17 and a guy in the top 10. So like usual, 40% of my team is going to be in the top 10 or top 20, and 60% of my team's not going to be close to the cut. So fantastic. Let's keep that going this week. Bucket A, I'm going to go with Cooper Gallant. There's a lot of great anglers in this bucket. When you look at it, Joey Cifuentes is going to probably catch them. You got Kiyoya's in the bucket, obviously, Fujita. LeHue has a great reputation here. Jay Shakura, last year's champions here. There's Patrick Walters, Kyle Welcher. Obviously, all the top 20 in AOY are in this bucket. So a lot of good picks to choose from if you want them. How about your boy? I don't know where he's at in AOY. Let me look in AOY. Is your boy Luke Palmer going from outside the Classic, or worried about missing the Classic, and now he's 19th because he got a great finish at Champlain and he got second or third at St. Clair? So wow, he went from worrying about it to making the top 20 in points right now. That's how big a jump can make. So great bucket there. I'm going with Cooper Gallant, though. I want to see what he does in an elite event. I'm encouraged for the most part that he's dedicated to the lake. I kind of feel like this: if you have a guy who's in the river and also spending time in the lake, what does Ron Swanson say? If you try to half butt 2 things, you're not going to be able to do it, and you need a whole butt 1 thing. So at Champlain, I picked guys I thought could half butt smallmouth and half butt largemouth, and I just needed to pick guys who were whole button smallmouth. So I'm going to pick guys who are going to whole butt Ontario, because if we do break 100, that's probably where it'll be done, and I'm picking guys who are probably going to be out in the lake the whole time. So Cooper Gallant, Lake Ontario, bucket A, that's my pick. I picked them Monday night when the buckets opened, so everybody I picked had 0%. So I have no idea. I'm not changing. I'm in 70 percentile, Kyle. I don't give a rip about percentage. Coop's at 18%. I don't care. That's awesome. Bucket A for you.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. So I also made all my picks last night when the percentages didn't show, and I woke up this morning just to find out that my entire fantasy team is extremely high percentage. But like you said, at this point, I don't care. This is something we talk about a lot during the years, percentages and this, that, and the other. I'm just picking guys I think are going to catch them, and I'm sure they will, and I'm sure I'm not going to make up any ground, but who cares? Bucket A. I've got the highest angler in
at this point. I'm just hoping people don't set their roster so I can pass them in fantasy and get a better percent. I'm just hoping
we need people to quit. That's what we need.
Oh, there's a tournament this week. I didn't set my team. Thank you. Yes. No reminders. No reminders.
Yeah. I've got Jay Shakura in bucket A. I don't know. I think you made a good point there, thinking about guys that are going to run to the lake almost regardless. I didn't really pick my roster based on that, but now that I look up my entire roster, I think it's made up of all guys that will do that, which does give me a lot of confidence. Obviously, that's where Jay won it last year, obviously over 100 pounds. Doesn't really need to say a whole lot about his performance there at St. Lawrence last year. You and I have had this conversation, obviously, but for the viewers out there, I don't think it's a matter of like, Jay Shakurat obviously does not have a lot of experience on the St. Lawrence River. I think it's to the point now where it's like Jay Shakurat, anywhere a smallmouth is a factor, he's going to catch them. Like I thought at some point this season, through the 3 smallmouth tournaments, and this is no disrespect to Jay, you just kind of think of one of those 3 between St. Clair, Champlain, and St. Lawrence, he's going to fall off. Like he's not going to do well. He's killed it at St. Clair and Champlain. Like, I don't think it matters. I don't even think it matters if he's ever been to the body of water. If it has smallmouth in it, like, he's going to catch him. So, Jay Shakurat, 103%, I think, picked in the bucket. Actually at 43%. But anyways, like I said, who cares? Bucket A, Jay Shakurat.
That's just a lot of, and I have nothing against Jay. I mean, he was a debate on if we put him on camera day 1 or not, and it's like, I want to go see it. I mean, if he's going to prove us wrong, cool. We'll see him day 2, 3, and 4 on camera. Like, it's like, it's all good, but it's just, there are so many people. We've been there every year since I was born, I think. So like, there's so many guys who have great track records. It's like, who do you choose from? I mean, the fact that we're going to leave Taku Ito and Brandon Polinick off the camera sheet, like that's absolutely crazy. But let's hear your bucket B, and then I'll go to my bucket B.
Bucket B, sticking with a high percentage.
Hey, the big, yes, it's the Johnston bucket. That's the debate.
The Johnston bucket. You and I were talking about it, obviously, before we started this. I think you look at bucket B, and you could make probably the winning Drain the Lake team out of bucket B. That's how like stacked bucket B is with guys that have, a history of doing well at the St. Lawrence River. I would feel like a big dumb idiot to not pick Chris or Corey, one of the two. I've picked Corey in the past, just trying to go with the lower percentage because let's just be honest. It's a toss up who's going to win between those two. Like not win the tournament, but win against each other. It could be either one. Nobody would be surprised if it's one versus the other. They're both so good there, but I'm going with Chris Johnston and bucket B, going with a high percentage again with Chris.
Yeah, and like you said, we picked it when there were 0, so like we didn't know which Chris or Corey was going to be favored higher.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at it, Corey has a better reputation at the St. Lawrence River on top 10 finishes, it seems. The only year that he struggled was when he broke down boats, had the wrong time on his graph, and was late and missed the cut in 2019 and was like 36th, and we take 35 people because he had a penalty and was late. So that's the only time Corey slipped up. Chris hasn't slipped up, but Corey's done it in opens where he won. He got second in this year's open. Like Corey will go fish a fruit jar out there and just like try to win it. Like it doesn't matter. Coop revealed that, really the Johnstons don't fish the St. Lawrence River unless they're practicing for a tournament, and he doesn't fish it, unless so they're not just fishing out there. They're fishing with time restrictions on practice, got to make it happen in this amount of time to do this or that. And so with 2 days of practice and the tournament's not going to be ideal conditions, that only leads it to the favorites more to me. Like the guys who know sneaky things to go check, or they know how to practice for the weather that's coming. They see the wind and they know what bays are sheltered. They know which spots can't be used. So I'm going to save that spot for day 3 and 4 when the wind lays down, and I'm going to go fish these 2 places. Like they know all that. And so Johnston's, no doubt, it was just who I wanted to pick. Corey's got a great track record here. Chris has an Elite Series title. Chris proved it in 2020 out in the lake when it was rough as can be that final day. He overcame and was able to win, came from second on that final day to win, and beat Paul Mueller in that event. I'm going Chris Johnston in bucket B. I normally, like you said, I'll go back and forth between the guys. I really don't have a problem picking either one of them. I just feel right now Chris will get it done for some reason more so than Corey. Now it could be 4th versus 5th place. It could be 7th versus 9th place, but like, I feel like they're both going to be in the top 15. And I'm just going out on a whim with Chris, not on a limb, because this is not a risk at all. It is more so, I just got a gut feeling when I looked at it and they were both at 0. I was like, you know what? I think Chris is going to do really well this week. And so I picked him.
Yeah.
So he's my bucket B pick. Then we go bucket C. Like I said, we picked it with 0% on the board. You got guys like Gussie, Fighter, Hartman, Huff, Ito, all these guys in the bucket. And I'm going Paul Mueller. Man, I just picture riding big waves and like fishing, with your forward facing sonar, like, or on trying to navigate big water like that. I got no doubts in the world. Mueller is apt to do that once again, prepared for it. Having a better season for sure than past years when he would be in bucket D or bucket E. Where's Mueller at? Mueller he's in bucket C, but where is he at in AOY? He's in 48th. So he is currently outside the classic cut by 30 points, which to me says like he's got nothing to lose. I got nothing to lose. Let's see where he's at. 48th with 434. 70th place is 384. So he's got 50 points on the requalification line, and he's got 30 points from the classic. He's got to go for it. Got to go for it to make the classic. And I think he'll do it out in the lake. So Paul Mueller is my bucket C pick.
Me and you both. I got Paul Mueller in bucket C. When you mentioned it, but when you think of big waves, rough water, I just always think back to the visuals of that 2020 tournament, Paul Mueller and Chris Johnson going out there and just going for it. I mean, there was plenty of other guys that also just turned around and said, forget that. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to risk going out there to do it.
I don't think Corey went out in the lake. I think Corey stayed in the river that final day. I remember seeing a drone and I was like,
turned around.
What? No way.
Yeah, sure. So I'm right there with you. Obviously, Taku in bucket C. I mean, there's some really good guys in bucket C you could justify. Gussie, Fighter. I mean, Justin Atkins coming off a really good finish, second place there at Lake Champlain. But I'm also going Paul Mueller.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm Paul Mueller.
Give me your bucket D, because this is where it gets a little wild. D and E. Nobody ever wants to probably pick people in bucket D and E, but you have to. And there are some interesting ways you could go about both buckets.
I think there's two guys that stood out in bucket D to me. I guess really three maybe. But the two that stand out to me and the two that I paid a lot of attention to this last week based on points was Alex Redwine and Jacob Fouts. Obviously, both those guys are extremely good smallmouth fishermen. They both need it. They both need good finishes to stay above that 70th place, threshold to stay on the elites. So I don't know how they're going to react to that. It could be positive, it could be negative. But to me, both those guys have answered the call 2 tournaments in a row, with their backs against the wall. I don't think that pressure is going to get to them, because if it was going to get to them, it already would have happened, in my opinion. And I'm knocking on wood because I don't want to jinx them. But both those guys are on such a good roll right now. Both really good smallmouth fishermen. And you could even say Chris Zaldane, would be one of those guys that would go for it. Just say, screw it. I got nothing to lose. It's been the worst season I've ever had. And go for it. He ain't scared. I mean, he'll do it. However, all the things considered, I'm going Alex Redwine. I think Redwine in bucket D is a really solid pick. It's high percentage again, but I got Redwine getting it done in bucket D.
I'm going to go with the most accurate man in the sport of bass fishing when it comes to bass track, and that's Ed Lochran. 0.5%. I don't really care percentage. I don't know why I said that. It's just a thing beside his name, so I said it. Bucket D, Ed Lochran. Had a good finish. Where did he finish at Champlain? He had a good finish at St. Clair, just outside the top 10. I think he got 12th. Anytime we go up north, he really is good with his forward-facing sonar, holding it down for the old guys, if we're being honest. Everybody wants to say it's a young man's game. He is one of the best at that. He got 35th at Champlain, 13th at Lake St. Clair. I'd expect him, you kind of have to look sometimes at what brand these guys use for electronics to know if they may factor, just because of the comfortability with it, how much they've had the technology. If they're a part of, let's just be honest, if they're a part of Garmin, they've had it for a lot longer technology. Obviously Lowrance got it a few years later, and then Humminbird as well. And so if they're with these different companies or have had that technology, they're more apt to know it already. So for the old guy crew, Ed Lochran's my pick in terms of being a little bit of a surprise, and he's really good at smallmouth fishing, if we're being completely honest. Let me click his profile once again to show his performances, not just this year, but on smallmouth in general. 35th at Champlain, 13th at St. Clair this year. Then we go back, and he has had some decent finishes as I scroll. In Plattsburgh at Champlain before. He had a tough one in Waddington one year, it looks like. But overall, let's see how he did in the 2020 Elite there, where it was rough. 28th place.
We're getting a live view of Ronnie questioning him.
No, I'm not questioning. No, not at all. Not at all. He's also a guy who needs to catch him. When you get to bucket D, you're going to have guys above that threshold for qualification. For next year for the Elite Series. He's at 80th place, about 50 points out of 70th. Nothing holding him back. Gotta catch him. So Ed Lochran, bucket D. Then we go to bucket E, and like I said, I didn't want to pick a single guy in this bucket. I don't think it fits their style. I don't think it fits their season. If we're allowed to, we're never harsh in bass fishing. Not at all. We are the most complimentary media organization for our anglers ever. We don't hardly ever get into controversy about them or beat them down when they're not doing well. But I didn't want to pick anybody in this bucket. But I went with Alex Wetherell, Elite Series rookie. There's some guys who don't even have spinning rods on their boat. There's some guys that don't even have spot lock on their boat. There's some guys that don't even like catching smallmouth in this bucket. I got to go with the guy who's up north. That's just my Hail Mary heave. For Wetherell, I think that he needs a little, pick me up at the end of his rookie season to catch him. So Alex Wetherell, my bucket E pick, just because he is the prettiest girl of the girls remaining at the dance.
I've also got somebody that's pretty. He's got some really nice hair. And I've got Chad Pipkins in bucket E.
No more stash, no more goatee.
Yeah. I mean, clean shaven, the boy looks good. The one thing I will say is, you take what he does at St. Clair. He's obviously had some success at St. Lawrence River. I think he is. You could almost tell. He's always super positive, super up. Up at ease, not like never gets down, at least publicly. You could tell during the weigh-ins at Champlain, like he was almost like pissed off. Like he was like not happy with himself, not happy with the way that some of these tournaments have gone here recently. So I take him as one of those guys that's also just going to go for it. He might swing and miss and go down on strikes, or he might literally win the tournament. I don't know. But like you said, bucket E, not even just because it's guys that are having tough seasons. Like you said, there's just a lot of guys in bucket E. I just don't have a ton of confidence, given the St. Lawrence River and smallmouth and the way that you catch them. I just don't have a ton of confidence. But Pipkins is a really good smallmouth guy. High percentage. That's been a theme, obviously, like I told you it would be. But I'm going Chad Pipkins in bucket E.
If you looked at Pipkins' resume this year and it was no tournaments beside of it, just the finishes, you would assume the 9th place or whatever in the top 10 at the Sabine was his St. Clair finish, and his 91st at St. Clair was his Sabine finish. That's how odd his northern swing has been.
Strange.
I want all these guys to catch him. There's so many people that need to catch him to continue to stay on the Elite Series, and we'll get into that in just a moment before we wrap up the podcast. But let's go to Drain the Lake. We'll burn through this pretty quick because some of our teams should overlap. We've saved, I planned out my team in January. Tommy, Such, and myself, we just set our teams in January and let them ride from there. And so I'm pleasantly surprised. I saved everybody, had ultra discipline. Now they need to come in and capitalize and do well for me. My first four of the most obvious guys out there, going Cooper Gallant, Chris Johnston, Corey Johnston, and Clark Wendlandt. No explanation needed for any of those. The only one we haven't mentioned so far is Wendlandt. Wendlandt does fantastic in big water. He does fantastic in forward sonar events. I think that Wendlandt is just more of a safer pick, but also I'd expect at some point he's going to break through and win one of these big water ones because he's had enough top 10s and top 5s to justify that a win is on the way for Clark Wendlandt. And so his skill and ability out in the big water makes him an easy pick for Drain the Lake. So my first 4 were Coop Gallant, Chris, Corey Johnston, and Clark Wendlandt.
Yeah, great pick on the Wendlandt. This will be the first time I think I have not picked him in either game, just based on the way it lined up. But love that pick. My first 4 are going to be Chris Johnson, Corey Johnston, Paul Mueller, and Brandon Polinick. Those are my first 4.
Fantastic. Saving Polinick. It's crazy to go to a smallmouth event and we are 30 minutes into picks and we haven't mentioned Brandon Polinick yet. So that's crazy, right. But there he is. My last 4, Clifford Perch, Kyoya Fujita. I seemingly have picked these guys like before the season started, like one event after they win. Like I had Joey on my Champlain team. He got 11th, but like he just won St. Clair. Now I expect him to go back to back for my team. Fujita just won Champlain. I expect him to go back to back, and he may do that. So I've got Perch, Fujita, Wetherell, and Shane LeHue. LeHue has been a great smallmouth angler, and he's gotten top 10s there where it's calm. He's gotten great finishes when it's rough. My biggest thing here, he handled it well, but Chase Sansom told me that Fujita had told Davey Height behind the scenes that like he's never ran rough water and that Champlain was the roughest he's ever been in. That lake on day 1 is gonna be the roughest thing he's ever been in. So like navigating time-wise, fishing in it efficiently, who knows how it could go for Fujita. Obviously great at forward-facing sonar, but there's different with being good at forward-facing sonar or electronics and then being good at Great Lakes fishing. There are old, crusty, broken back, beat up Northerners who are, the Great Lakes. They represent the Great Lakes and they know how to do it. And then there are guys who go up there that should catch them well, and just it's a different world up there. So I'm putting Fujita on there. Not because of a Champlain win. Like I said, picked these teams way long ago. But I think that all these guys, know how to catch a smallmouth. So we'll see them do it. Who's your last 4?
My last 4, Jay Securit, Justin Atkins, Coop Gallant, and Taku Itu.
Nice.
I have saved basically every smallmouth angler I know for this tournament. This is the one that I always save as many as possible, because I try to skate by all season long and then just try to blow it out of the water. It's worked. Last year it worked really well. This year I'm at 92%, so I need a Hail Mary, and that's what we're going with.
Well, I'm at 88%. The one thing I haven't had this year is winners. I think Drew Benton's my only winner that I've had in Drain the Lake. I had him at Murray when a lot of people picked him at Seminole. So I need a winner this week. And I think I might have had Brock Mosley at Sabine. I think I might have did that. There might be 2 winners this year. I need a winner. I had Taku already used. I used him at St. Clair, so he got me a top 10 there. So I'm never disappointed when somebody gets me a top 10 when I use them. So I was more disappointed that I used Polinick in the Classic, and he did not do so hot at the Tennessee River. Didn't expect him to smoke a log on the final day of practice either and get a new boat, but that's neither here nor there. There's our Drain the Lake teams. I'm going to read my 8 again. Coop Gallant, Chris Johnston, Corey Johnston, Clark Wendlandt, Clifford Perch, Kyoya Fujita, Alex Wetherell, and Shane LeHue.
My Drain the Lake roster is Chris Johnston, Corey Johnston, Paul Mueller, Brandon Polinick, Jay Securit, Justin Atkins, Coop Gallant, and Taku Itu.
Now, Kyle, I didn't tell you we were going to talk about this, but let's talk about the requalification aspect of the Elite Series. Final event of the season. So a lot's going to be decided. We have locked in, in past years, people are probably like, that's the question every year. Who's getting kicked out? Who's not making it back? Who's requalifying? All those things. Well, the last few years, we really haven't had many relegations. Like we've had enough people get medical hardships, enough people retire, enough people do this or that we really haven't had to relinquish anybody. We have implemented the old Elite Series way where instead of the average of everybody in the field being stacked up to where you could get 37th in AOY, but you're back because your average is best, out of the whole field overall for your career. or the 4-year sample of the Elite Series since 2019, whatever the case may be. We've gone back to the old way where top 70, not 70, but just the ratio of percentage, get based on field size, what we thought was a good number to secure safety. Everybody else has to fight with average. So 70 was the number we came up with. Top 70 in AOY are safe. Whether you've been last the last 3 or 4 years in AOY or not, if you earn the top 70 in points, you're safe to come back on the Elite Series for next year. Obviously, your AOY averages are still being calculated with how you finish in points. So just because you're safe doesn't mean that your average, you could have a 50th place average overall and you get 69th. Your average is going to drop even though you're safe. So the second you fall below 70th one year is the second you're in doubt. So keep that in mind. Top 70 in points, guaranteed. If your favorite angler is 70th or above, guaranteed to return. Now we're wanting to have a 100 angler field size. That's the goal. 100 angler field size before we get to legends and medical hardships. So when we look at it, you have top 70 are safe. You've got 5 anglers that are on their first year of qualifying for the Elite Series, so they get a guaranteed second year. So it goes from 70 to 75 if we're thinking about adding up to 100. So 70 to 75. Then let me just go ahead and read what I sent to Chase Sansom. Then we'll have 10 anglers added to the field via the opens with 9 anglers and 1 from the nation. So that gets us to 85. And then this is what I said to Chase. We're at 85 now for the 100-person field. That means of the 29 remaining anglers below 70th in points that are not first-year anglers, 15 should return based on their average to make the field size 100. Anybody of the other 14 that get kicked out, or that, that don't requalify, of the other 14 that don't requalify, legends like Clun and Nixon, should, if they still have legends points, will return to the Elite Series on top as an addition to the 100-person field. And then medical hardships like Bernie Schultz tearing his bicep before the New York swing. Schultz was 50th in points, tore his bicep, took a medical, and then now, is going to fall down the AOI. So if you see Schultz, don't worry about him. He'll return via medical hardship. So that'll get us roughly to a field size of 103. Things can change. This is Ronnie Moore. I make 0 decisions at Bassmaster. I barely make 0 decisions, other places in the world. So just take that with a grain of salt. That's how we get to 100. And then we get to 103 if everybody stays the same there. Now, if we have anybody who makes it back on average, Kyle, that retires, that means that one person who was planning on, being relinquished will not be. That retired person will come off. That's one less person that drops off the elite field based on average. Now we're tabulating the average based on their career. So if they fish 5 years in the elites, if they fish 10 years, that's how we're doing it. If you fished more than 5, you get a drop year for your worst year. So if you're a perennial top 20 guy and you have a 90th, you drop off that, you're good to go. So looking at the points race for the top 70, it's really tight. 68th is 1 point ahead of 69th. 69th is 1 point ahead of 70th. And then there's a couple jumps. From 70th to 71st is 6 points. And then from 71st to 72nd is 13 points. So these guys not only have to move up 1 or 2 or 3 spots in AOY to be safe, they have to do 15 or 20 point jumps to do so. That's something we'll look at. And we mentioned some other guys. I'm just going to read them off. It's public knowledge there in terms of the AOY. Frank Talley is the bubble boy at 70th on being guaranteed safe. You got Bernie, who's a medical hardship, 71st right now, 72nd for Fouts. Webster, Zaldane, Whitaker, Williamson, Prince, Frazier, Wong, and Loughran. That's the first 10 out currently right now, out of the safe guaranteed. You'd have to look at how their averages stack up. Obviously, Williamson almost being an original elite guy, Zaldane having a great track record, Whitaker having a pretty solid average. Some of these anglers will have a 8-year average, some will have a 2 or 3 year average. So it will continue to do their averages. You can simply look up the old AOYs and do your own averages if you want, but guys like Buddy Gross down in the 80s should be fine. This is his first ever bad year on the Elite Series. Guys like Caleb Kufal, for the most part, should be fine. Depends on how far, but that's the thing we'll keep an eye on is how many big names are below 70th. That means they're going to be probably the first people back based on average. And if you're a second or third year guy and you haven't had a great first or second year, it's going to hurt you a whole lot more because your average is much more affected by a bad year. So there's a lot on the line with Classic, AOY, ROY, and requalification at St. Lawrence.
Yeah, no question about it. Obviously, we talked about it last week, and it'll be talked about throughout live. I mean, when you get to this point in the season, there are a lot of things going on. Not just classic line, not just for the AOY points, not just rookie of the year points, but like you mentioned, obviously the one thing that nobody really loves to talk about, obviously the requalification line, but that is a big part of it. And that will certainly be something to keep an eye on. Obviously a handful of guys down there over the last couple of tournaments have put themselves in a really good position to, be above that 70-point threshold, or 70th place threshold where maybe before 2 events ago they weren't. So it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out. I'm looking forward to the event a ton. Like you said, have about 1 billion things to do between now and then when we fly out. So I'll be running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to get everything done. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I will let you go and you can let me go, and we will see each other on the next episode of the podcast, which I believe will be an opens winning ways. We've already shot it just because we had a little bit of free time. We already got ahead, so we can do that. Then we'll come together and we'll talk about the whole Elite Series season as a whole at some point. We'll start popping out. This is as soon as the Elite season ends. It's not the off season, Kyle, but you can tell me if this is the way you feel. Holy cow, our lives slow down just a little bit more. We'll have 3 opens left. You have the College Classic bracket, Team Championship, Nation Championship, Redfish, and that's it. So single-digit events left for the Bassmaster tournament season, and single-digit days left for the Elite Series anglers. 4 days left, 2 guaranteed, a lot at stake. 15-point race for Joey Cifuentes over Fajita in Rookie of the Year. 6-point race from Welcher to Cobb in Angler of the Year. And we got to look at it. Cook hanging around 30 points behind. He's in 3rd place in points. Shakurit is 36 points behind. He's in 4th place in AOY. Walters is 39 points behind. He's 5th in AOY. And then Joey Cifuentes is 42 points behind in AOY. And he has a chance as well. I think that's about as far. Schmidt is 52 points back. I think that's just a little too far, needing 6 guys to falter. I think 42 points back with 5 guys. I think that's doable for Cifuentes. So we'll keep an eye on Rookie of the Year, Angler of the Year, Classic cut line, and unfamiliar face on that line. Brandon Lester, he is the last man in the Classic right now. Cody Huff, first man out. You've got guys like Steve Kennedy, just in. Corey Johnston, just in. He's glad to be at home, but it is a little nerve-wracking when you're 5 points ahead of the Classic line. Got to stay in to make the Classic. We'll keep an eye on that. Gussie, if he has a really great event, he could double qualify from where he is in the lower 40s, but he's already guaranteed in. He's just trying to maybe bump it down for somebody else. So keep an eye on that and more. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. We'll come at you with some more next week, and we'll keep it going every week of the season on our calendar. We'll see you in the next one.